Hey, what's happening? How are you? That's okay. That's okay. How are you? Are you well? You with me? Alive? All right. Good to be with you. Hey to everybody on all of our campuses. Earlier on this week, I was working out of my favorite place to work off campus, which is McDonald's. Some of you may know that. It's like great Wi-Fi, air conditioning, and I love their sweet tea. Ambiance is nice, and nobody that I know goes there. So it's like perfect spot to work. And I was actually working on this message. I was crafting like a specific part of this talk about engaging with people and how sometimes, like when we try to engage with people, our technology gets in the way. Like if you've been in a fast food line before, typically like I have my phone and I'm looking at my phone until I have to order. Maybe you're like that. Or if you're around people and you have like your headphones in and like you're on the bus or you're walking from class to class, whatever it is, sometimes we just have distractions that can get in the way of engaging with people. So I'm like working on this. At the time, I'm in front of my laptop, my screen's up, I'm typing. And I've got my headphones in. I've got these like knockoff. These are knockoff AirPods. They're $30 from Amazon. They're amazing. And I'm using these. I'm listening to some background music. And at the moment, like conviction punches me square in the nose because I'm thinking like I should probably practice this if I'm going to preach this, because directly in front of me, I'm at the high top table. You know, they got like an assortment of tables in McDonald's if you've not been lately. They've got a high top section that I love, and so I'm sitting over there. And directly in front of me is another guy sitting by himself eating lunch. He's got a spicy chicken sandwich, which is $1, and he's facing me. And I could see that I'm supposed to do something here, and I really don't want to. I'm supposed to have a conversation with this guy. I don't know why. I just have this nudge that, like, he's alone, having lunch. Why don't you just start up a conversation? And this is like a matter of a couple seconds, and I'm fighting. I'm fighting, like, with the monologue. You know, I'm fighting with the nudge. I'm like, but I got work to do. Like, I'm supposed to, like, there's deadlines. I got to preach this message. There's students on the line. And I was all right, okay, I had it. So if you could see this, like you see, I just take my headphones out, set them down, and I see that the guy in front of me has a motorcycle helmet on the table. I know nothing about motorcycles. So I was like, hey, your motorcycle helmet has a bunch of writing on it. Is that like specially made, or did you get that stock? That's all I had. Like that's the only question I could lead with. And he's like, no, I got this. This is like standard. It says like Speed Demon on the side or something. I was like, oh, cool. Genuinely, that was all I was going to offer. Was just that comment, just that question. He says, do you ride? It's like, no, I don't know how to ride motorcycles. He's like, you've never ridden a motorcycle? I was like, well, I've done like a dirt bike out in the desert, but I've never ridden like a street bike. I'm assuming you have a street bike. He's like, oh, okay. You want to ride? Without even thinking, like no logic was going through my mind at all. I was like, yeah, I want to ride. He's like, well, let's go. Oh, you mean right now? You want me to go outside and ride your motorcycle? He's like, yeah, let's go out. You can ride my motorcycle. And then I started to backpedal a little bit. I was like, well, I don't know if you know this, but I just told you. I don't know how to ride a motorcycle. And you want me to go out and ride your motorcycle? He's like, it's all right, I'll teach you. I said, okay. So I put my things away, like my laptop in my backpack. I leave it at my desk, because that's my desk. I'll come back to it. I go outside with him. As we're walking out there, he starts dropping little pieces of information that he did not disclose earlier. He's like, yeah, I actually got in a crazy accident like a month ago. Crashed my motorcycle. I had a broken bone. I had stitches. I almost died. And you're going to go teach me how to ride a motorcycle outside. Got it. So we go out. He's like, yeah, this is actually the 20th motorcycle I've owned. And I just bought this motorcycle like 20 minutes ago. So this is a brand new motorcycle to you. Yeah. And you want me to ride it? He's like, yeah, it'll be cool. It'll be all right. No, it won't. No, it won't be. So we go outside. This is a new to him motorcycle. It's used, but he just got it. Like he's ridden it all of like 4 miles. And he's coming over to this side of town. He's going to show it off to a friend. So he's like, all right, well, hop on. Like throws me the keys to his what he calls a stunt bike. I don't know anything about motorcycles. It's like, this is a stunt bike. It's what they like do the wheelies on, and guys do like headstands on it, and normally they crash on YouTube, and so you're gonna ride this motorcycle. So I get on it, he's like, all right, gas, clutch, brake. Like do the thing there, and then go. Okay. He offers me a helmet. He's like, do you want the helmet? It's like, I'm okay. If I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna go down really fast. So I'll make it quick if I die. So I get on the motorcycle and I just start like riding around random guy. This time, I don't even know his name. And I'm riding around a random guy's motorcycle. I take a turn, and you don't turn like this. As it turns out, you don't turn like this. You like lean. You have to lean. Things I'm learning as I'm going. I lean. I take my first turn past McDonald's. I pass Bank of America. Then I'm coming around to where Starbucks is, and I take another turn. I come back, and I'm going to pass Dunkin' Donuts. And right now, you're wondering, like, did he crash? Did he crash this guy's motorcycle? I don't know how it happened, but by, like, God's grace and sheer miracle, I was able to return the guy's motorcycle back to where I started in that same stall. And I don't know how fast I went because I was like white-knuckled on that thing, probably like 7 miles per hour at the peak, but I like shifted up to like third gear anyways, and get back to the place where we were, and I get off, and I'm like so amped. I'm so pumped. I'm a motorcycle rider right now. Like I know how to do this, and he's like, well, you can take it out to the street if you want to. I think what I heard him say, and it might have just been my imagination, was like, you can take that out to the highway. I'm like, well, I probably will do that maybe eventually when I have a license and I know how to ride a motorcycle, but thanks for the offer. And then we start walking in, and while this is all going on right now, I'm thinking, God, what do you want me to do with this conversation? What do you want me to do with this experience? Because this is like, for me, this is a blast. I was scared to death, but this is really cool. But it can't just be about a motorcycle. Can't just be about like a random ride around the parking lot on somebody's motorcycle. It has to be about more, but I don't know what it is. So I said, hey, man, I'd love to hear your story. Like, find out who you are, because you're obviously a little wild. Let's hear your story. He says, all right, let's do it. So let's go get coffee sometime, and he agreed. And so later on that day, I sent him a text, and I said, hey, let's go get coffee. But the way that I texted him, I did like voice to text from my Apple Watch. So I wasn't really paying attention to word for word. And so the text was supposed to say, Daredevil, do you want to go get coffee? Like Daredevil, comma, do you want to go get coffee? But because I voice to texted, it said, Dear Devil, do you want to go get coffee? And it sent it to him. Like I got one shot with this guy, and I'm calling him the devil. So he laughed at it, fortunately, as I did too. I was like, I meant to say Daredevil, please forgive me. So 2 days later, me and Daredevil, we go get coffee. We sit down at the same McDonald's, grab something to drink, and I just hear a story. I probably ask him 100 questions just to hear about where he came from, his life, what he's all about. He knew because he saw my Bible. He knew that I was affiliated with a church. He eventually obviously knew that I'm a pastor. And he started to disclose information about his upbringing. He's like, yeah, my parents raised me to be a Christian, but I'm just out on it. Like, they made me go to church. They kind of forced me. They're good parents, but I just didn't want anything to do with it. And so he's 24 now, but for the past 6 years, he's had nothing to do whatsoever with church or with God. And he starts firing all these questions off at me. He's like, how is it possible that, God could have so many people on the planet that don't know who he is, and if they don't know who he is, then they go to hell? I'm like, whoa, this is like first hang, buddy. This is our first chat, and you're already like firing bullets at me. And he's like, and I don't understand how there could be all these different religions, and yet Jesus is the right way. We spent about an hour in this conversation. We didn't talk about him coming to church. Didn't offer to like baptize him like right there, like let's do this. The conversation, as far as I know, I don't know what will come about from it. I don't know if we'll have several more. I hope we have a couple more. I don't know what God was doing in that moment. I'm just kind of taking my cue as I'm sitting there in McDonald's. I'm taking my cue from the guy that we're learning about, from the guy that we're studying in this influencers series, the most influential person who's ever lived and how he lived his life. And the way he lived his life, he demonstrated this and he taught this, and we talk about this often. He actually told stories about this, is that he engaged with people. Like Jesus engaged with people. There was one particular example of this. Someone came to test him, a religious expert came to test Jesus. And he's like, hey, what's most important in the Old Testament, particularly in the commandments? Like, what's the most important of the commandments? And Jesus like, love God, love others. Love God and love your neighbor is what he said specifically. So this guy tries to test Jesus. He's like, okay, well then who's my neighbor? He didn't really care about the answer. He just wanted to make Jesus look foolish or himself look really smart. And so he then hears from Jesus a story. It's a story that most of us have heard before. It's a very familiar story. It's a man that goes from Jerusalem down to Jericho. And along that road, he's robbed, he's beaten, and he's left for dead. Story of the Good Samaritan, you've heard this. Along that road, then 3 men pass him by. The first one is a priest. And you would imagine that a priest would stop and tend to somebody's needs. This is out of Luke chapter 10, verse 31. So this priest just cruises on by, sees what's going on, is actually on the same side of the road as the dude that just got abandoned and left for dead, but he keeps on going. And then the next verse, it says that there's a Levite, and a Levite is also a practicing religious Jew, and so he's also on the same side of the road as the priest was. You would have anticipated that person would have stopped and done something with the guy that's on the ground, but he doesn't. And then the third person is the Samaritan. The story is called the Good Samaritan, but that's just added later. He was just a Samaritan. He stopped. He's like the enemy of the Jew. They would have said, like, no way would a Samaritan have done anything here. So this is a surprise to all of Jesus' listeners, especially this religious Jew. He says, well, then the Samaritan stops. And it's kind of a cool phrase. He says that the Samaritan stops and took pity on this individual, which is like he just cared. He just had empathy for the person that was abandoned. The Samaritan stopped. And then Jesus kind of does a quick quiz. It's not like a trick quiz or anything. It's just, hey, out of the 3 guys, who was being neighborly? Well, the religious guy knows. It's the last guy. It's the Samaritan. We would know that too. He says, yep. And then Jesus kind of leaves him with this summary of it all. Go and do likewise. Why don't you go and do likewise? I think that when we think of influence, oftentimes we think of influence as the masses. Influence as like the majority, or the way that we can gain the most amount of voice in people's lives. But I think when you just study Jesus, you see that what he did was just individual engagement. Just one conversation, one meal, maybe one cup of coffee. Jesus is just spending time investing in one person. I know you know this, but if I could just remind you that there's someone around you. It's at your school, or it's in your class, it's on your team. It's maybe even in your group right now, but there's someone around you that even though you don't see them hurting, they're hurting. Yeah, that's kind of like the struggle when you think about like the Good Samaritan is. It's obvious when you see somebody on the ground bleeding, like left for dead, that we're to help, and we should do that. Like we should take care of those that we know are obviously in need. But the problem with our lives is that there are people around us that are in need. They're broken, they're damaged, They're hurting, but we just can't tell. And one of the reasons why we can't tell is because we just don't know. And one of the reasons why we don't know is either because we don't ask or they don't reveal. But someone around you is struggling. They may be here in the room, and we're just sometimes good with fakery. Sometimes we can just put on a smile and pretend like everything is okay, but deep down inside, there's pain going on. There's depression around somebody near you. There's anxiety like festering with somebody near you. Someone's going through something hard. Family is getting divorced. Someone lost a job in a family. There's sickness. There's death. I mean, someone in your life or someone that you pass by and you don't know their name, you don't know their story, they're hurting. And you do often probably what I do. Here's what I do. Man, I can be really task-oriented. Like, I'm moving from thing to thing. I'm going from one appointment to the next. I've got tasks in mind. For some of us, we're just really preoccupied, right? And the reason why we don't stop and engage with someone that we think maybe they need some attention from us, maybe they need some time from us, is that we're preoccupied with our own plans or our own schedule, or we're just preoccupied with ourselves. Like what's going on in our life, right? I think one of the reasons why we oftentimes don't engage with people is because of our own fear. Like, what would I say? How do I strike up with a conversation with a random person in McDonald's? You know, a motorcycle guy. How do I, what if they ask me a question and I don't know the answer? And what if they've got problems and I don't know how to help? And what if it just costs me a lot of time and I don't have a lot of time? You know, for some of us, it's the reason why we don't engage with people is because of our own insecurities. And like the thing that we don't talk about all that often is every one of us have insecurities. Every one of us has insecurities. And so when we think like, I'm not sure, and I'm introverted, I'm shy, I'm not sure I'd have much to offer. You know, so we use these examples as really like a smoke screen that for some of us, the reason why we don't engage with people is because, man, we don't want people to engage with us. We're nervous that someone will know who we really are. I don't think we get around this, truthfully. I think if you want to be influential, you've got to learn how to reveal who you really are. The good stuff, the bad stuff with other people. And I wish my wife were sitting here with me because she'd be nodding her head like he struggles with that. He struggles with that because I don't love letting people into my world. But man, I want to be influential. I want to engage with people the way that Jesus engaged with people because I know that there's so much that he's wanting to do through us, for them. He's wanting to change a life, and the way that Jesus changes lives is so often through people that trust Jesus. It's a conversation, it's a comment. What would it look like, students, if the way that we lived our lives, or did we just engage with people? We kind of like the headphones. We like left the headphones off when we know that there's people around, when there's an opportunity to engage. We kind of put the screen away. Doesn't mean you've got to be weird all the time. Sometimes I'm weird. That doesn't mean you have to be that way. But what if you just saw your life, whether you're a believer or not, what if you saw your life as a person that God could use to make someone else's life better? And you just looked around. You took any opportunity that he had for you. And I don't mean like, hey, do this next year. I'm talking about this week. Like, what if every student left this space, you're going to go off to your groups and you're going to discuss a whole bunch of how do we do this? But what if you left this campus or your campus and then this week you engaged with someone that, and you don't know. They're sitting alone at the lunch table. They sit by themselves on the bus if you're a bus rider. You know, you pass by them because you go from class to class, and hey, I did this too. Like, I cruised from class to class. I was not looking to kill time. But what if you just slowed down enough, you ask somebody a question, and I know what it has to be. It has to be beyond the question. Hey, how are you? You asked this before? Hey, how are you? It's good. How are you really? Are you telling me the truth? That hesitation in there. You all right? Everything okay at home? Everything okay with your family? I know that breakup was last week. You doing okay? I think it may be harder than it sounds, but I think it's just simpler than we make it. What if we just engaged with people? Well, my hope is that we would become a type of church, that you'd become the type of student that wherever you go, you engage, that I engage, and God begins to use us. Sometimes it's a matter of encouraging another person. Sometimes it's just to build them up. Sometimes it's to let them know that they're cared for, that someone notices them, that they're recognized, that they're a human being. Sometimes, you have no idea the place where they are at. You know, the cliff may be closer than you think for some, and then your kind words and concern or your text message, even somebody that you don't know all that well, to invite them to spend a little bit of time with you, to play a pickup game. I don't know what it is, but what if we engaged? What if we loved people? And what if we changed the world just like Jesus? I want that for me. I hope you want that for you. Let me pray for you and send you off to groups. Father, thank you for the example that you set for us. We want to be just like you. And help us to take the scary, risky steps, the messy ministry of engaging with people in our world, just as they are. Father, we love you. It's in Jesus' name that everybody says, amen.